Hello everybody, welcome to another vocabulary lesson. These words I consider advanced vocabulary because I don't think they're usually in people's active vocabulary. And many of these words are phrasal verbs, and if you want to find out more about phrasal verbs, please consider buying my book. It's available on skype-lessons.com or on amazon.com, and it's called Visual Phrasal Verbs, and you can find it for £20 in black and white as a physical copy, or £20 for a colour copy but PDF electronic version. Okay, so without further ado, let's come on to some of these words. A layabout, first of all. Now, a layabout is a lazy person. It means anybody who's lazy. They lay around most of the day. They lay about most of the day. So it is from a verb, this noun. And you can also remember it by thinking about what verbs like laze around. If somebody lazes around all day, then they're lazy, yeah? But we would say the same about somebody who lays around all day or lays about all day. And so that's where this lay about comes from. It's a lazy person, nice and simple. Now, I've put three verbs here, although because they're all related, they're all phrasal verbs. But stiffen up was the one that was in the TV show that I was doing with the student. All of these words came from a show called Frasier. It's an old American sitcom and it's got some great vocabulary. But most TV shows have great vocabulary. They certainly all have loads of phrasal verbs. And so please watch TV shows and try to pick up new vocabulary as you're watching them. But all three of these are similar, because if something stiffens up, it becomes stiff. If someone toughens up, they become tough. And if something straightens up, it becomes straight. So you might straighten up your hair in the morning. I certainly try to put mine down because it tends to stick out. But all of these just mean to become straighter, to become tougher, to become stiffer. They all mean very similar things with this up preposition. And they're all pretty common. And so you can use them in a variety of different ways. You might say he's trying to toughen up his son at the moment by taking him to boxing or something like that. But yeah, there are lots of different ways you can actually use all three of those. Now, if you reconcile with somebody, I should put that as well, because I always like to give you the prepositions too. I think you should learn the prepositions at the same time as the verbs because they're dependent on the verbs. They're dependent prepositions. So reconcile with somebody means to make up with somebody. It means to become friends again after some kind of row or argument or spat. We had that word in the previous lesson. So after a row or an argument or a spat, you might reconcile with that person. You might become friends again. You might make up with them. Now look at all of these phrasal verbs. They're certainly all in the book that I'm selling. So please consider getting that book. The tide. Now, I'm not sure if you know what the tide is, but the tide is when something, it's the movement of the sea. And you don't always get a very strong tide in all places, but in this country you certainly do. And in this town we have a very strong tide. The tide comes in and the tide goes out every day. And what that means is the sea comes in and it goes out every single day. And it goes out so far, I mean several kilometres, that you can't see it anymore. So when you go down to the beach, sometimes you go down there and there's sea right up next to the sea wall, and other times you go there and there's no sea, it's gone. The tide has gone out, and it really does mean that it disappears. You can't see it anymore. You can just about make out very large ships which are going down the Thames estuary towards London. And so there is still some sea in the middle, but it's such a strong tide and it goes out so far that you really can't see the sea anymore. So we say that the tide comes in and it goes out. Yeah, when the tide comes in, it's high tide and there's loads of sea. And when the tide goes out, you can walk out on the seabed, and very often you can even see seals out there. We even have some seals that very often come to this town. And if you don't believe me, you can even look online, and there are videos of these seals swimming with people and jumping onto the surfboards and stuff, because windsurfing, not surfing, but the windsurfboards, sometimes they come up and even say hello to the windsurfers. So yeah, we've got very strong tide in this town, but remember as well a few others. The sun comes up and it goes down. It comes up at sunrise and it goes down at sunset. Nice and easy. But also the sun comes out and the sun goes in. Now this is when the sun goes in when it hides behind a cloud. Yeah, when the clouds move in front of the sun, they obscure the sun, and so we say, the sun has gone in, so suddenly it's all shady, it's not as hot when the sun goes in. And when the sun comes out, it appears from behind a cloud and it suddenly gets much hotter and much warmer and much nicer all of a sudden. Because we get quite a lot of cloud, these are quite important, you know, that we quite often say, the sun's gone in, it's getting colder, or the sun's come out, that's nice, let's go out in the garden for a few hours. Okay, if meat is raw, it's uncooked, and if any food is raw, it's uncooked. That's all raw means uncooked. So if you might like raw meat sometimes, you might like some forms of raw meat. I certainly do like the spiced hams and things like that. I think it's really quite tasty. So we'd call that raw meat. If somebody is feeling giddy, they are feeling dizzy. It's exactly the same as the adjective dizzy. It means your head is going round in circles. But I think quite often we say that somebody is giddy when they are in love, perhaps, or really, really happy. And we mean that they're so happy that they feel dizzy. Strange, because I don't normally feel dizzy when I'm really happy. But giddy literally means dizzy. So it literally means that you feel like your head is going round in circles. Now, if you say that somebody has zest for life, it means they have enthusiasm for life. They're a very positive person, perhaps very optimistic, and they're very enthusiastic. So I have a lot of zest for grammar nowadays. I really enjoy it. I never used to as a kid at school, but nowadays I do really enjoy grammar, and I actually really enjoy vocabulary as well, which wasn't something I was interested in a long time ago. But I have a lot more enthusiasm for it now because I see that communication is key in life. I didn't realise it perhaps to the same degree when I was a kid, and I realised that the way you communicate, the way you speak is incredibly important because all social interactions come down to how you express yourself, how you speak. So vocabulary is important and grammar is important simply because all social interactions, the foundation of all social interactions is vocabulary and grammar. Okay, now to reign and to rule. Somebody recently said to me that they were taught at school that the Queen reigns but she does not rule. And I find this quite amusing. I was taught exactly the same thing at school. I was told that the Queen has limited power, or no power at all. In fact, I was told the Queen has symbolic power and she doesn't have any real power. And reign is a word, in my opinion, it means more or less the same as rule. When you say Queen Victoria reigned for 75 years, it means she was in charge for 75 years. She was the monarch. But what people mean when they say the Queen reigns but she does not rule is that she only has symbolic power, she doesn't have real power. But I don't actually think this is true. We teach children this at school, but as you get older and you realise that the Queen's one of the wealthiest people in the world, she's also one of the most powerful people in the world because money is power, at least partially. And she actually has an audience with the Prime Minister, no matter who that Prime Minister is, every single week. And so I find it rather odd to say that she has no political power. If she's meeting the Prime Minister every week, well, that sounds like she's got political power to me. Now, serendipitous means fortunate or fortuitous. It means that something happened by chance, and usually it's by a happy chance. It's quite positive. So it's like lucky. Yeah, something is serendipitous, it's lucky. And fortuitous, lucky. What we used to say when I was a kid was fluky. I remember there was a goalkeeper that we knew and we called him a fluky goalkeeper because he used to save the ball by accident. You know, it used to hit him and that was how he saved the ball. So if somebody is fluky, then they're very lucky in some kind of way. But this one's quite rare and I imagine that it's only UK. I don't think that the Americans say fluky, but they certainly say serendipitous and fortuitous. Now, if your eyes glaze over, it means you're incredibly bored. Okay, incredibly bored people, their eyes tend to glaze over. So if you're speaking to an audience and the audience's eyes glaze over, then that doesn't sound good to me. It sounds like you're giving a very boring, tedious, dull speech, and you don't want to do that. Now, if you uproot a tree, you dig that tree up. I had to do this in my old garden where I was living before. I managed to uproot 6 pine trees, and they weren't fully grown, I must admit, but they were pretty big, and I can remember sweating a lot that day, profusely sweating, and I remember using an axe and a spade to try to get, I firstly chopped it down and then uprooted the whole base, and that's what uproot means. It means get all of the roots out of the ground, and that was not easy. You had to dig down and dig up the roots. Firstly I dug all around the root, and then chopped the main roots with some very sharp garden scissors, or garden shears I should say, and then I managed to dig up the whole root. Now, a cue can mean a couple of different things. It can mean a billiards cue, yeah, a pool cue. It can be the stick that you use in billiards or snooker or pool. But it also means if you do something if you take a cue from somebody, it means that you do something on their signal. Their signal is your cue, and this is very often used in TV and theatre. The actor has to go on stage when he is given a cue, and it means a signal that it's his turn, that it's his time, and he must go on stage at the right time, of course. So that is also a cue, and as you can see, it's a very limited meaning. It's not used in many different ways. But if somebody does something on cue, that means that you've just been expecting them to do it, or thinking about them doing it, or even talking about them doing it, and suddenly they go and do it right on cue. And so you might say something like, I was wondering if she would arrive, and then right on cue she opened the door, something like that. Now, if you squelch through the mud, this is like wade through. It's a type of walking, and squelch sounds like you're going through mud to me. You're obviously going through some kind of puddle or mud or something which makes a squelching noise, because squelch is really a type of sound, like it's the kind of noise that your feet make when they're going through something that has some watery consistency. So you can squelch through a puddle or squelch through the mud, just like you can wade through the mud as well. Now, if somebody does a run-of-the-mill tasks, these mean boring tasks, ordinary tasks, menial tasks would be another good way of putting them, of putting this phrase. So yeah, if you've got a run-of-the-mill job, it has got a hyphen there as well, then it means a boring job, tedious in some kind of way. Okay, it's boring, it's tedious, it's ordinary, it's not a positive compound adjective, it's a negative one. Now, if children sulk, then they're being very uncommunicative, and it's because they're in a bad mood about something. We've all seen children do it. It's when they go and they don't want to talk to anybody. They are sulking. They're in a bad mood, and that's why they're not talking to anybody. And so, yeah, children usually sulk, but adults can sulk as well, of course. I think we all sulk sometimes when we get upset. Now, if you console somebody, you comfort them in some way. You can see that they're upset. So maybe one of your children is sulking and you go to console them. You try to make them feel better in some kind of way. And that's what you do when you console people or comfort them. Now, you might shower somebody with gifts or praise or compliments, and this means that you sing their praises. That was from another lesson. You speak about them in glowing terms. That was from another lesson. You constantly praise them. You give them compliments, and if you shower somebody with gifts, you're giving them lots and lots and lots of gifts. The idea is a shower has a lot of water, right? And so when you're showering somebody with something, you're giving them lots of that thing. Okay, so shower somebody with gifts, shower somebody with praise or compliments. If you say that somebody has a gaping wound, this means that they have a cut that's really deep and really big, and it's open. And gaping normally means wide open. That's really what gaping means. So somebody can stand there with their mouth gaping open, and it means, You know, it's wide open. I won't come too close to the camera so that you can see right inside my mouth. But gaping, it means, yeah, wide open. So if somebody is standing there gaping, then their mouth's wide open. Now, if somebody talks with unbridled enthusiasm, that means unlimited. So a great amount of enthusiasm. They have plenty of zest for this topic. And so unbridled literally means unlimited or uncontrolled. I think of bridles on a horse usually, not sure about that. I'm not much of a horsey person, but I believe it's what goes around the horse's head. Not sure. You can check that out anyway, bridle. Do check it, do look it up in a dictionary. If somebody can write it on the screen right now, great, I'll say what it is. But it limits in some kind of way. So unbridled means unlimited and wild and uncontrolled. And if you have unbridled enthusiasm, you have unlimited enthusiasm, loads of enthusiasm. If you have unbridled ambition, loads of ambition. Horse's mouth, thank you Alex, really appreciated. So it does go round the horse's mouth. If you have unbridled lust, you can't control your lust, those feelings. So unlimited, wild lust, lustful feelings which aren't being controlled. Unbridled joy, unlimited joy. Unbridled greed, really greedy person, really mean, really stingy, really tight-fisted. And unbridled fury, unlimited anger. Furious, you should remember, as a strong adjective for angry. Okay, if somebody is priggish, or they have a holier than thou attitude, then they think they are morally superior to you. And of course, this is negative. When somebody thinks they are morally superior to you, it's not usually a good thing. It means that they think they're better than you because they think they are more ethical, more scrupulous than you are. And I'm not so sure that that will be the case. So you can also say they are self-righteous, and you can also say they are sanctimonious, because all of these really do mean priggish. They mean that they believe they are morally above you, morally superior to you. They do things better than you do in an ethical sense. So yeah, it's never positive, this. And I like to point out that this thou is our old singular form of you. You is the plural polite form, and thou is the singular friendly form. And so you can see that English had thou and you, French has got tu and vous, Russian's got ti and vi. These you forms are pretty widespread, and it makes me believe that everybody used to speak the same language, and over time different languages have developed. I think this is why the word nose is usually got a n and a s sound in there, no matter what language you're speaking, or a z sound. Okay, condescending is usually when someone thinks they're morally superior as well, but condescending means just superior really, not necessarily morally superior. But yeah, if somebody thinks they're better than you, they're arrogant, and so condescending and arrogant are very similar. If something is demeaning or humiliating, then it makes you feel less than you really are. It makes you feel inferior. And of course, you don't want to do a demeaning job or a humiliating job, and so these are very negative words, both of them very, very negative, and they're both the same. If you do something dutifully or obediently, then that means that you obey these instructions very carefully, and you follow them through because you believe it's your duty or your obligation to follow those instructions. And if somebody robs you blind, they take all of your money, all of your possessions, they take loads of your stuff. But you might say it for somebody who sells you something at a really high price. You might say, you're robbing me blind with that price. It should never be that expensive. And I want you to remember, rip somebody off and mug somebody off. Two more phrasal verbs which certainly appear in the book. So please go and buy this book on Amazon. They're both in there, and all of these mean to cheat somebody. Some other ones which are very similar are to clean somebody out. Thank you, Alexander. And that's in this book as well. And also to do somebody out of some money, to diddle somebody out of some money, to cheat somebody out of some money. And there are plenty more in this book as well, if you want some more phrasal verbs that you're bound to hear on the TV shows that you enjoy watching. So thanks everybody for your attention. I hope you enjoyed that class. Please give me a like, share me on social media, share these videos with your friends if you think that they're interesting, if you think that they're useful, and I hope to see you all soon.